Why do you think that personal branding is actually so crucial for creatives out there?
Branding really is the soul that gets put into that business, that sets it apart, that helps it become memorable, that helps it really become top of mind for folks when they have that certain need that you can help solve. What are common branding mistakes that people make early on?
Today's episode is my Filipino friend. Her name is Praise Santos. She is the founder of the branding studio ComePlum out of San Francisco and also the lead photographer there. Praise, I am so excited to chat with you today about personal branding for creatives. I think it's something that often gets lost just in the throes of being an entrepreneur and a creative. And I think it's really important we have this conversation today.
Well, salamat for having me on the podcast, Daniel.
My experience, I'm sure a lot of other creatives' experience, focusing on your personal brand often feels like energy draining. I don't have time for it. But why do you think that personal branding is actually so crucial for creatives out there?
Yeah, personal branding. Well, let's even step back a bit just because it is this kind of newer word. Some people have different definitions of it, but when we teach branding, a good way to put it is your business is often like the body of what you do, right? You're solving someone's problems and they're paying you a currency for that. Okay, so that's your business. But imagine that as like the body or the framework, and your branding really is the soul that gets put into that business, that sets it apart, that helps it become memorable, that helps it really become top of mind for folks when they have that certain need that you can help solve, right? And so that's your business branding. But then how does personal branding come into play with it? Well, we often have to remember that as service providers, as people who are helping solve people's problems, they are hiring a business, but oftentimes people are hiring people. They want to have that human connection. And if we're speaking to creatives and filmmakers and other photographers, we have to remember what an honor it is for us to be helping these other brands, these other individuals tell their story. And it's so personal. And so for us to be able to gain that trust from these people who want to hire us, we have to show them that we are trustworthy people. We have to show them the human parts of ourselves, the personal parts of ourselves, because that's who they want on their team. And so personal branding is so important, and personal branding is such an essential part of a business, but often gets put on the back burner because we think it's not important. So your question was, how do we help prioritize it? How do we help people say, hey, I know you think it's just about getting cool cameras or learning the right gear, but you need to put yourself out there as a business, as a brand. How do we get people to do that? I often tell people to kind of step back. You heard it a little bit in my story, and get down to the core of, why are you doing this? Why are you showing up? And how can you continually remind yourself why you're doing this? Again, for me, like, I broke it down to really simple terms. Oh, I get energy by loving people and creating pretty things. And that drives me a lot of the way. Whereas other folks are trying to tell 1,000 important stories, or some other folks are trying to do X, Y, Z. And if you can say that often to yourself, but often to your clients too, it's going to start re-energizing you, and it's going to start setting you apart in other people's minds. That's like one of the easiest ways for it to become important to you, and one of the easiest ways to start setting yourself apart in a very crowded market.
Yes, it's very competitive. And what would you say are like some of the pain points creatives are coming to you on, like, why they haven't made this a priority?
Oh my goodness. Well, right, as business owners, we're wearing so many hats, Daniel, right? We are, okay, suddenly I have to make sure I have like the best gear, but I also have to pay taxes. I also have to like hire subcontractors, help me finish these jobs. Then we all know our editing queues can be so long. So there's like one challenge. It's like, I don't have time for some of these things, right? And then other folks are also like, not only do I have time, I don't know where to start. There are so many other people like me, right? And there's that also mental block of imposter syndrome. Like, do we really need another brand coach or strategist in the world? Do we really need another photographer in the world? And our minds also try to trick us that we don't have something important to say. And so I want to acknowledge those things if your listeners are going through that, whether it's like, I don't have time and I'm not anyone special. I just want to say you're not alone in feeling that. And I want to say these are manageable things to conquer. These are manageable things to address because we have such fingerprints when it comes to being creative. So we have such a particular style, even though I lead a team of photographers and I often say that, you know, we have a very similar look and aesthetic. I know exactly what Anna can do. I know exactly what Julian can do that makes it so special for a client. So I can also connect them with the right folks and the right creatives too. And I know that they're so different, even though there might be the same kind of alignment. And I want to remind you all of that too, that there is some special spark to you. There is some special way that God created you that makes you different, that you are meant to serve a certain someone, or certain someone's, or a certain audience too. So if that's tripping you up, I want you to give yourself permission. I do have a unique story to say, because that'll give you more encouragement to figure out that why. And then when it comes to time, I totally hear you. We are living in a pressurized world where we're expected to do 10x than we did 5 years ago. But here's the thing is we're given so many tools to be able to do that too. And so the things that make you human, I think you should still be in charge of those things. But the things that are actually really repetitive, thank God of a world where we live with such AI, with robots, with also with like great folks out in the world that you can hire and pass on things that are not in your zone of genius so that you can keep on your plate the things that really make you you, the things that really set you apart, and you can offset a lot of those things. I know for a lot of creatives, it is so hard to give up editing because it's so much a big part of what you can do. But that's actually one of the quickest ways you can just like pass on something of like, oh, wait, I have to edit 1,000 photos. That's probably 10 hours of my time. But there's so much out there that you can start delegating out to give yourself more time to just show up and be a human. And so that's some of my encouragement of those. If people are struggling with, oh, I don't have time, or I'm not special enough to show up as a personal brand.
That's great. And I think, yeah, delegation is something I'm working on and learning. So say someone does, like, they take that step. I would say that next step is, as you said, it's a very competitive space that we're in. How do you go about coaching people to make themselves stand out without feeling like they're forcing a personality or being someone they're not?
That is tough because I do feel like, as Daniel, are we elder millennials or just regular millennials?
I feel elder millennial lately, to be honest.
As millennials, wherever we are on that spectrum, authenticity has become such a big buzzword. I will say amongst Gen Z too, they have like their BS meter is up. They know when you're like faking it and they're over it. They actually are trying to highlight imperfections more than perfections, which is such an interesting and refreshing twist in society too. And so when it comes to words like authenticity and honesty, how does that relate to us showing up online and creating these brands that feel not phony, right? How do we show up in a way that feels like real and human to human so someone's BS meter doesn't come up? I think a lot of it has to do with a self-awareness. It has to do with the time we spent dedicated investing in, honestly, going on a solo date, or even if you can just dedicate like an hour of your time sitting and journaling and asking, what are my values? You and I have talked about this recently, of honing in on what's important to you, honing in on what the specific thing that you are called to do, what really lights you up, when are you in flow? And it's one, that kind of self-awareness piece where you're asking these questions. But then two, to show up more authentically online. And if you need some help, you can also ask some trusted people in your life. We have a resource called a hype sheet, which is like a Google form template that you can copy and send out to a few trusted people in your life. So I often tell people to send it out to 3 professional connections, whether it was like a former boss, a former colleague, etc., but also 3 people in your personal life. It could be your partner, your best friend, a parent. And it'll ask them these questions like, hey, what are strengths that you see in me? What are things that I'm really good at? When have you seen me like really lit up and in flow, right? And sometimes we need feedback from the people who see us and know us best rather than just us seeing it in ourselves. And people will tell you these things. We also have a question in there that asks, what is a topic that you know I'm very well versed in, or something I'm really good at that you wish I talked more about? Honestly, this is gold, because these are people in your life who are like, oh my gosh, Praise, I wish you saw this in yourself. You are so good at this, or you light up when it comes to this. They are telling you what content they want to see, right? This is just a small sample. You can even send this out to more people in your audience, your ideal clients, etc. But if you just start with that small circle, you start having a direction of just like, oh yeah, this aligns with where I get energy. And wait, I never knew people wanted me to talk about, here are 10 tips of being a better podcaster, being a better interviewer, being a speaker. I didn't know that was a gifting of mine, but several people have said it. Oh, maybe I can start talking about that. And then you just try it. You just try it and see if it comes off phony, or see if it comes off like feeling so aligned with who you are. And so that's one of my tips of just like, hey, if you feel confused about how to show up in your personal brand, you can crowdsource and also just spend time with yourself to figure out those answers.
I love that. That's such a great practical answer. I'm going to put that hype sheet link in the show notes, because I do think, especially like, someone like me who's a solopreneur, it's easy to get in your head or overthink things. So having people identify traits and then, like you said, kind of cross-reference and see what the trends are, I think is like a really good place to land in the start. And then I would say probably that like next phase is like, what are some of the crucial branding toolkits that every creator should have in their bag?
Yeah, so branding, again, a really interesting topic. How do you turn that into a very tangible toolkit? Again, I have described branding as that human connection. And so let's back it up a bit. If I was introducing my friend Daniel to my friend David, Daniel contains multitudes, and I wouldn't be able to even say everything about him that makes him an incredible person, but I'll keep in mind who David is and what the points of connection would be. Oh, hey, they're also on the West Coast, or maybe they're both creatives, or maybe they're both fathers. There's something that there's a connection point. And same with this branding toolkit, you have to figure out who the audience is, right? For some folks, is your goal to have more media coverage? Is it to get on more podcasts? Is it to be a keynote speaker to get on more stages? Is it to get more gigs or jobs? Like, who is that end person? Why does it matter to them? Is it other brand partnerships? Are you trying to be more of an influencer type of business? And so keeping that in mind will help influence what's in your toolkit. But at base, what we often include is a short bio. Who is this person? Is there 100-word summary that we can put in about their story? Are there a collection of headshots so that if they are already going to be published on a news media piece, it's easy for them to grab approved photos? Are there also key topics that this person speaks on or has experience into? We often call that your brand pillars. What are you being made known for? What are the topics that you love talking about? And again, the hype sheet that I mentioned earlier will help you kind of hone in on these things that people want to hear about. Then you can start including examples and links, so you can make it so easy for someone. You could put it as a page on your website, but honestly, I've seen it really effective. You can put all this on a Google Doc so that when people ask you, hey, like, could I have your bio, your headshot, your XYZ? You're like, oh yeah. And it's a quick little link, accessible and free to everyone. And so again, keeping your audience in mind and making it easy for them to access is what we often tell people to keep in their brand toolkit.
I like that a lot, because I think even for me, I get caught up in like kind of the work of things, but then if I am trying to attract new clients, it's like, it's not so much what I'm projecting about myself, but it's how these clients are perceiving me.
100%. If you really keep in mind that your brand, yes, it's a personal expression, but it's really an act of service. What will help serve these people, my intended audience? That's going to change like your framework and mindset of what branding is.
Trying to pick out what gear to use as a content creator, filmmaker can be overwhelming. So I put together a Google Sheet that I will update frequently with gear that I've either used or can recommend. We'd love for you to have that resource. Make sure you click on the link below. Save time, save money, shoot better. Now let's get back to the show. So you've been really a whole host of things in the creative space. What was that aha moment for you where branding was the focus that you wanted to put all your energy into?
Yeah, I do feel like, well, as humans, we evolve. As creatives, we evolve. And even as business owners, I still joke and call myself an accidental business owner, because even my journey of being able to do this full time was not in the cards. Being a child of immigrants, I did not think art was something that I could be doing full time. And so I went to school, I studied communications, I moved out to San Francisco, and I worked in the nonprofit sector for a bit. But it is one of those things where you are doing this thing day in and day out. I was managing volunteers, working on grants, etc. And I was good at it, but there was something missing. I really wanted to not only love people well, like help build communities, but I also wanted to make pretty things. There was like my hands were itching for it. So I just wanted to try it for 3 months and see if I could make it work. 3 months led to a year, led to me kind of trying everything, right? I was like, okay, well, I can make a living doing photography, but I was doing all sorts of photography, like real estate, weddings, baby showers. Like, come on, I have a camera if you'll pay me to do it. But then I had to ask myself, okay, of doing all these things in photography, when do I leave feeling the most energized? And it was when I was working with other small business owners. I felt so jazzed by it because I would be having conversations a lot like the conversations we are having now, and being also able to give them some collateral, some media for them to use in their business. And it felt like such a win-win. And so I started to focus more on branding photography in specific. And even as we've done more brand photography for our clients, I keep on asking myself kind of the same thing. Where's the energy at? What do I feel most in flow in? And so now we've expanded our branding services to even include brand strategy, brand coaching, brand websites, brand identity, because I really loved equipping people, not just with, oh, hey, here's like an end result, but I wanted to make sure they were on the journey of feeling inspired and resourced and confident to do the thing that they were called to do, because I knew what it felt like to not be confident or resource inspired to do the thing I was called to do. And if I could guide people along in that journey and use my giftings along the way, it lights me up. And so that's how ComePlum, that's how myself as a creative have kind of honed into this branding world.
How, in your experience, have you seen a strong brand translate to better opportunities, higher jobs, higher paying jobs, and like just overall bigger projects?
Yeah, I think about someone I recently had a coaching session with, and so our framework when it comes to branding is we often talk about your brand foundations, which is your mission, vision, and values. Your brand strategy that comes out from that, like how are you showing up? Who's your target audience? Where do they hang out? Where should you show up? And then your brand expression, things like your brand photography, your visuals, your website. How does that apply to your strategy and foundations too? So that's like our 3-step tier. But oftentimes we have to get back to this juicy base of your mission, vision, and values. And I was coaching someone on that, and he circled back with me and he was like, Praise, you told me to state my mission whenever I like had a discovery call or inquiry call with clients, and I didn't know it would work. But I was telling my client, this person's a filmmaker too, that my goal is to tell 1,000 like good stories. And that stuck with her. And I kind of forgot it, but she circled back 6 months later and she's like, we really want to hire you because we want to be part of those 1,000 stories that you want to tell. And it was such a differentiator from the other folks that they interviewed and the other potential contractors they would have, because you have to remember your branding can be a service to people, and a big value of people is they want to be part of something big. If you can tell them your mission and some of your why from the beginning, it's going to take you 10 to 15 seconds to say it on a call, but it'll help you become more memorable and it'll give them an opportunity to be part of something bigger. And so I loved hearing that. I loved hearing that it helped book my friends more jobs too. And I really think it could be a practical thing for your listeners to hone in on their why and start saying it more and more.
I'm going to flip the question a little bit, but bring it back to branding on this kind of concept of being picky and selective. I would say that's kind of a bucket that I'm in where, like from a filmmaking side, I am trying to build a more premium brand. And I've typically like just worked through referrals. So I guess I'm sure that I would imagine there's a lot of other people like myself where like you do want to cast a wide net of the people you work with, but also be selective and just not take on just anything that comes your way. What kind of advice do you have for people who are navigating that challenge?
Yeah, this comes with a really interesting thing because this lends to, I think, of a lot of our clients who are like rebranding because they need to work on what they're showing, so their portfolio. They need to work on who they're associated with, and they also need to work on their positioning. So these are three things that often tie in together, whether you're trying to get more paid jobs, whether you're trying to curate some of the content that you have out there. How can you start positioning yourself in a way that'll lead to clients that are more aligned with where you want to go? Maybe it is an alignment where I want more higher paying clients, or I want more clients in this industry. How can you adjust your portfolio, associations, and positioning to represent that? So when it comes to portfolio, you can start cleaning out your portfolio and taking away those things that you don't want to be associated with. So it doesn't come up in your Google search. It doesn't come up as people are looking on some of your social media. So cleaning that out. But then it's also perhaps doing some free jobs that look like what you want to shoot, right? So it could be a passion project, but it's more aligned with a style of film or like a TV network that you want. How can you shoot toward that? You might have to invest first to be able to create a portfolio that you want. And then there's associations. Where are those people hanging out? Where are those decision makers hanging out? What kind of networking circles do you have to be part of? What kind of rooms do you have to be in? How can you be bold on LinkedIn to start asking for those introductions so you get more associations? And then this is like the juicy part when it comes to branding. It's also that positioning. How do you set yourself apart in a certain way? How do you start associating yourself with what, again, if we're using an example of folks who can pay higher, like perhaps they're in a luxury brand division. How can you also start, okay, if our target audience wants to pay this much and they associate this price with these other brands, how can I start positioning myself as I'm also the Mercedes-Benz of brand strategists? How can I also be the Four Seasons of filmmaking too? So you start to see little things, because even though your businesses might be different, if we really do think about a higher luxury market, we often talk about hospitality too. Why is it that Four Seasons is so good at what they do? They take such a personal approach. They oftentimes will give you a concierge. They oftentimes will go above and beyond, surprise you with gifts. Like there's luxury premium products in their rooms. Could I apply that to my work too? Could the gifts I give to my clients also be luxury and premium? Could I go above and beyond and connect them with bonus services and surprise and delight them too? You start putting on different hats to start positioning yourself as this X in this market too. And so those three pieces could really help your listeners start to brand themselves as they're trying to get into different markets or try to reach up into higher pricing tiers.
I love that so much. I think, for listeners, also for myself, I've also been doing, a lot of internal work, backstage work, as I like to call it. And so I'm definitely going to start kind of leaning into that on my discovery calls and going forward. I think that's such a great practical takeaway. And I would say like one of the ways practically I've been trying to do that is this podcast. A couple things. I just put out around 10 episodes. You've done, close to 50 now, which I looked the other night. I'd be curious to just kind of pick your brain a little bit. I think podcasting, one, is it's a trend that really hasn't gone away, but only gotten stronger. I think a lot of people are curious about it. So one, I'm curious, like what advice you have for me as I grow my podcasts, and what you have for those who are looking to start a podcast.
Yeah, the Frame by Frame podcast. So excited about it. I'm so honored to be in like early on, because this is already, you're blowing up, Daniel. You could already teach on this too. So I'm glad that you're asking me for my advice. podcasting is really interesting. It's been an enduring medium too, kind of a surprise as well. Because you remember when podcasts first came on the scene, it was so niche and so specific. And now it's like broadened out more and served more people, and it's become more in people's daily lives. And I think that's the amazing part about it, is people associate it with, hey, I listen to it every time I commute to work. There's this show I listen to, or I listen to it when I'm at the gym. There's something that people do in their everyday lives that they bring in a podcast that honestly, they give us the honor as hosts, as those who have a show, to be part of their daily lives in their ears, or if you're a video podcast to in their eyes so that they can see you too. I know when I was given advice to start a podcast by a coach of mine, they're like, Praise, you'd be great on a podcast. I had a lot of my own doubts. And I imagine some folks who are thinking about a podcast, I don't know if you had your own doubts about it too. One of my silly ones, Daniel, was that I thought my voice was too high pitched for podcasts. I'm like, I don't have a voice for radio. I don't have that NPR voice. How are people going to put up with me too? And it was just this thing that held me back for a while. And I also had to find the right timing for me. I had to want it to, even though someone gave me advice to do it, I had to want it to. And so I feel like getting over non-essential fears and also just figuring out in your own energy when the time is right. When I knew I wanted to start it at January of 2024, it felt so right. But one of the best tips someone gave me, though, to make sure that I had a niche and I had a perspective was, okay, what is it that your audience needs? And then what is a topic that you could talk about a lot, that you nerd on a lot? Could you come up with 52 topics for that podcast? And it was just this exercise, they set a timer and you just wrote down all these things. And I know you are 10 episodes in, but I imagine you have a plethora of guests and ideas already. I knew I could have a podcast because once I saw the amount of things I could talk about on the Branding Your Business podcast, whether it's about branding, business, but then you get into the niche parts of finding your values or new hacks in the business world or the small business world. And I was like, oh, wait, I could talk about this for days. So there's one tip, is just kind of ideating about things to talk about, because you could have a small limited series, but maybe just positioning as that. But if you really want a show that's enduring, what is that thing you could nerd out about for a long time? A second tip I'd give, though, too, is that podcasting, if you're creating content really regularly, can be a grind. And Daniel, you are so talented, but I do want to encourage you, what can you delegate out? That has been such a game changer for me, and keeping myself to, I'm actually really good at asking people questions and engaging with folks, and I'm okay at editing. And so for me, I pass on editing and putting it up on all the channels to our online business manager, and that's her zone of genius. So that really freed me up as well. So those are some of my top 2 podcasting tips: coming up with topics and knowing when to ask for help and delegating things out.
Well, shoot, I'm going to put it out. That is something I think in the beginning, I think it's nice to figure out the flow, but I'm starting to get into a rhythm, and honestly, external jobs are starting to pick up. And so I am running out of time on my schedule to put everything together, because it is a lot, like you said. So if anyone's interested in being involved on Frame by Frame, would love to chat with you. I would love to maybe chat with your person as well, because I'm getting kind of to that threshold of needing to delegate. And then what would you say, been doing it for a year, is there one real thing that stands out to you in your year of podcasting that you've learned?
Yeah, an interesting thing, and when I knew we really had something, is that so many people ask us to be guests on the show. And at first I was like, whoa, people know we exist. That's amazing. And then I started thinking about my folks who are listening, and I really started to hone in on what they needed. And I started being pickier of who we have on the show, just getting really in tune to who our listeners are. And that can be a really interesting thing as a host, of just figuring out, how can I continually serve our people and also become a curator of knowledge, a curator of wisdom, to make sure I'm continually serving these people well. And so it's been an interesting thing, vetting our guests and making sure that I'll have a great conversation with them. And it hasn't been, haven't been 100 all the time. I sometimes have ended some interviews. I'm like, I don't know if that was a really good fit. Like, that felt kind of funny as an interviewer. Like, I would ask questions and they just like wouldn't really answer them. I'm like, maybe that I said yes to something that maybe wasn't the right thing. And so that's been an interesting learning, having done this now for more than a year.
Are there any other common mistakes as we wrap up here that you see, and like, do you have any quick fixes for those mistakes?
Yeah. So you're asking what are common branding mistakes that people make early on? That I will say, we've talked about like the benefits of all our time saving strategies these days with a lot of AI. The thing is, people can smell when you have AI'd some of your brand and you haven't tweaked it. You remember have to use it as a tool and not as the end all be all too. I often use AI just to get something started. And then I often come in as an editor, tweak it, put the heart and soul into it too, to make it almost totally different from when it first started, but it helps me start. And that's what I want to tell folks too. Perhaps you're like, okay, how do I write a bio? And then you ask ChatGPT and then someone reads it and they're like, this feels like a robot, because it really was something that it had scanned the internet and it grabbed from so many other people and doesn't sound real or human. And so that's a common mistake I see, is like, I can kind of smell those things from a little far away of, you lean maybe a little too heavy on the delegation and not enough on like the groundbreaking work of, hey, you have the answers in you. You can make this feel human and you can make this feel like yourself. Another common mistake people have is they put together a mood board and they're bringing in inspiration from all over, but they start just copycatting these people. They start just like copy and pasting. And it's the same thing too. Maybe you weren't using ChatGPT or another AI, but you were still, instead of inspiration, you started emulating. You started just to become that other person that was on your mood board. I really encourage you to find that little thing that sets you apart. Even though we have templates, when I think about doing like brand photo shoots, we're like, okay, we need a photo of you working with a client. That's like a common thing we shoot. But then we're like, how can you bring in your personality? Can you bring in different artwork so it looks like really your office? Or what is that signature thing you do? Oh, you do a few deep breaths with people before you start a project. Let's hone in on that. So even though you can start with a template and start with inspiration, I really advise people to just like make it a little meatier, make it a little bit more you.
Well, I think one of the easiest ways that people can fix their branding mistakes is to come work with you. Let the people know where can they find you? How can they start working with you if they're interested in building out their personal brand?
Yeah, we are on the World Wide Webs. We are on the internet. So you can find us on Instagram.com/ComePlum. You can go to our website, which is also ComePlum.com. That's ComePlum.com. And then you can tune into our Branding Your Business podcast, our foundational episodes early on. I'm just giving you like a crash course into branding. And the episodes aren't long. I really encourage you to listen to those and then dive into different episodes to really dig into where you're at.
Awesome. Well, I would imagine that folks will be interested, because even for me, my wheels are spinning on how I can improve and change my personal brand. I think it's something that's always changing, always evolving, and something that can always be improved. So I'm looking forward to checking out those foundational episodes. Praise, it was an honor to finally get you on Frame by Frame, and I would love to have you back sometime here soon.
Can't wait to kick it next time. Thank you so much.
If you want to learn more, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. And if you could rate us on the platform you're listening to, that would be a huge help to get the word out. I would really appreciate 5 stars if this conversation was helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Frame by Frame.